Hi, could we test someone's microphone, please?
Hey now.
Test. Hello, Tony. How are you? Good morning. Good
Hi,
afternoon.
Tony.
All right, your audio sounds good.
Amazing.
Thank you, Tony.
I'm gonna mute the mic for the next couple minutes until the meeting starts.
That's fine. And just make sure that anyone's in the audience is speaking, have them come up and talk into the microphone. Have a good meeting, guys. We're watching.
Got it. Always, Tony. Always watching.
Keep it clean.
I mean, or don't. We'll just be on the record. This is the same thing we saw, right, in your initial email.
All right, I think we're. It is 7:00 PM and I call this Berry City Council meeting to order this Tuesday, September 27th at 2022. City councilors present tonight include Councilor Lozon, Councilor Stockwell, Councilor Wazazar, Councilor Booton, Councilor Sean Bell, and Councilor Deering. Good evening, everyone. Staff joining us tonight, we have City Manager Charlie Castro, Clerk Treasurer Dawes, and I don't think any other staff members.
We have Rick Taft.
Oh, and Rick Taft is joining us online. Good evening, Rick. Tonight's agenda is available online and in the back of the room. The meeting has been publicly posted, is being recorded and broadcast, and subject to Vermont's open meeting law and the council's rules of procedure, which are available online. I'd like to offer a warm welcome to all the guests joining us here in person and online. And if you are joining us online, please keep in mind that the chat function should only be used for technical issues or difficulties. If you become uncivil, you will be ejected from the online meeting. If you would, also as a reminder, we offer the online access as a convenience, and we will continue this meeting if any technical difficulties occur. If you would like to be recognized, I'll ask that you please raise your hand or signal that you would like to be recognized. And those of you who are in the room before speaking, please come to the front table. I'm going to call on speakers in order, allowing people who haven't spoken to speak first, and limiting time if necessary to do the city's business. And with the crowd tonight, I think we might want to start at a 5-minute limit. Please plan to state your name for the record and your place of residence, and speak into the microphone so the council and the public can hear you. I want to thank everyone in advance for participating in a civil and respectful manner. This is not a debate. This is a meeting of the city council. And if you have any questions about process or procedure, please ask and we'll get it sorted. With that, council, or I should start with city manager. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No adjustments, Mayor.
City councilors, are there any adjustments to the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, that takes us to visitors and communication for any item that is not on the agenda that a member of public would like to speak to. For those items that are on the agenda, I'll have you speak to that when we take up that item of business. I see Bern Rose, please come forward. Bernadette Rose. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Bernadette Rose. I live on Allen Street here in Berry City. October 10th, 2022 marks Indigenous Peoples' Day in our nation. We have been learning about our U.S. history of warring upon and subjugating the native people of this continent. In Vermont, we have the shame of the Eugenics Project, which was an attempt to build a white supremacist society later adapted by Hitler. As late as 1975, some Abenaki people were involuntarily sterilized. In the 20th century, the so-called Indian schools forcibly removed Abenaki children from their homes, stealing their language, traditions, and hope. We know that some survived by hiding in plain sight, and in the last 10 years or so are emerging to share with each other and those of us who are not native their culture, language, and understandings of living with the earth. Please join with me in supporting the Vermont tribes. There are 4 recognized Vermont tribes, many who are impoverished and struggling from the oppression of our ancestors. Ways to learn more about the work Abenaki people are doing and make a reparation donations are to the Nulhegan Band, the Elnu Band, the Missisquoi Band of Swanton, the Cowasock Band, or the Abenaki Artists Association. And I will be posting these on Front Porch Forum, as well as the a couple of chat groups for Berry, Vermont people. So if you would like to make a donation to the Abenaki Helping Abenaki for food and heat and those kinds of things this winter, you can find ways to do that. And if anyone has questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you for this opportunity to share that.
Thank you for your comments, Bernadette. Are there any other items for visitors and communication for item that is not on the agenda? Yep. If you could state your name for the record.
Yes, sir. Hi there, Anthony Williams. I live up on Grandview Avenue in Barry. I've been a citizen since 2002. I even ran for council one time as a write-in. I lost by 5 votes, by the way. Every vote counts, folks. Remember that. So a few years ago, that was a few years ago, but anyway, so I acknowledge that being a public servant isn't for everyone. It requires a level of commitment, dedication, and tolerance that not everyone can hit. To be okay disagreeing, to expect it, yet still be cordial and civil in with our fellow citizens. Until just recently, I assumed this was a universal mindset that I could be confident was being applied in our city's policy and planning. Sad to say, based on what we've seen recently with the Diversity and Equity Committee.
Oh, that's an item on the agenda, so that we're going to be taking that.
Table it till later, sir?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, happy.
Yeah, sorry that didn't come through.
That's
So,
all
yeah.
right.
So that takes us to the consent agenda, unless there are any other items for visitors and communication for an item not related to the agenda. Yeah. If it's an item that's not on the agenda, so if you're here to speak about the Diversity and Equity Committee, we're taking that up as an item of new business.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Toborg, and I'd like to speak to you about Proposal 5, which is the constitutional amendment that will be on the November ballot for all Vermonters to vote on. It would add the following language to our Vermont Constitution. Article 22, personal reproductive liberty. That an individual's right to personal reproductive autonomy is central to the liberty and dignity to determine one's own life course and shall not be denied or infringed unless justified by a compelling state interest achieved by the least restrictive means. That's the language that Vermonters are being asked to add to the Constitution or to say no to. And I'd like to point out some very important aspects of that language. First of all, the phrase personal reproductive autonomy has no fixed definition. It certainly includes an unlimited right to abortion throughout all 9 months of pregnancy, but also much more. Those testifying in favor of Prop 5 in the legislature suggested it includes how people become pregnant, which opens many doors into assisted reproductive technologies, potentially even human cloning. And supporters of Prop 5 has also repeatedly stated that it will be up to the courts to decide what the language of the proposed amendment actually means. You also may have noticed that the words women or abortion are not included in the amendment. The word individual is, however, and unlike other constitutional amendments which refer to person in reference to adults, this article would include the term individual, which would include not only women, but men and children as well. It would grant a man a right to personal reproductive autonomy equal to that of a woman. Again, in committee testimony, it was stated that the courts will decide what personal reproductive autonomy means for people who can't get pregnant. Children under this article would be able to make irreversible decisions about reproductive autonomy without parental involvement and under the influence of peers and adults unknown by parents. This proposal also goes beyond the standards of Roe v. Wade, which established an unlimited right to abortion in the first trimester, but said states could regulate abortion in the second and even prescribe abortion in the third trimester. Article 22 would enshrine an unlimited right to abortion up until birth as a constitutional right. Now, we're told that such abortions in the third trimester don't happen, but I would invite anyone who wants to Google late-term abortion Vermont to see that there are already abortionists advertising their third trimester elective abortion services to Vermonters. When asked if legislation intended to protect a baby that could survive outside the womb from a late-term abortion, whether that would be constitutional under Article 22, the Vermont Solicitor General testified that such restrictions would not be upheld under Proposal 5. These are just a few of the very concerning ramifications of Article 22. I would encourage folks to go to vermontersforgoodgovernment.org, an organization of which I am a part, to learn more about the hidden dangers of Proposal 5. It's also important to note that Article 22 is not necessary to protect abortion rights in Vermont. Abortion is legal and will remain so, even when Article 22 is defeated. There are many sound reasons to oppose Prop 5. To state that those who do oppose it are somehow anti-woman demonstrates ignorance of the broad ramifications of the proposal, shows arrogance as they assume the right to define for all people what opinions are pro-woman, and is insulting to the countless women, both pro-choice and pro-life, who are working to defeat this dangerous proposal. I will be voting no on Proposal 5 in November, and I hope other Vermonters will as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Toberg. Are there any other items for visitors and communication for an item that's not on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, that takes us to our consent agenda. And tonight we have 3 items on our consent agenda. We have approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting of September 20th, 2022. We have approval of the city warrants from the week of Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. And we have clerk's office's licenses and permit, none for
No, we
that.
don't.
Okay, so just the first 2. All right.
So moved.
We have a
Second,
motion by Counselor Lozon, second by Counselor Stockwell. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The consent agenda is adopted. The minutes will be filed in the vault. The warrants will be signed. Checks will get paid. That takes us to item 5 on the agenda, the city clerk and treasurer's report.
Mr. Mayor,
Madam Clerk.
so a few things. Last week was the actually goes back to the 15th, was the deadline for property taxes, but at last week's meeting, I didn't have a final delinquency rate. So I wanted to let you know that we ended up at 4.74%, which is below the 5% that I like to use as a target. So pleased with that. Water and sewer bills are currently due and are due by the end of this week, Friday, the 30th. So come on into the office, use the Dropbox. You can put them in the mail as long as they have a US Post Office postmark of September 30th or before. And we also have online options. There are service charges if you use the online options, but you can make payments that way. You may have seen in the news that the ballots for the November general election are going in the mail. They're being sent to all active voters, and they were mailed out. Actually, we got word from the Secretary of State's office that all of them have been mailed out as of today. So voters should expect to see them in the mail in the near future. I do want to remind people that that you have the opportunity to vote early by mailing the ballot back or dropping it off. We have the drop box by the front door. We also will be reinstalling the drop box at the back of the building. You can use that. I also want to remind you that you don't have to vote early. You can bring that ballot with you to the polls on November 8th and vote at the polls as you usually do. You can just bring that ballot along. You can have it all filled out in advance, or you can fill it out there, whatever works best for you. And if there's any questions, feel free to call the clerk's office. The local options sales tax goes into effect this coming Saturday, October 1st. I've been in conversation with a number of our local vendors, making sure that everything is squared away for that additional 1% to go into effect at that time. And lastly, the Board of Civil Authority and Board of Abatement have a meeting tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. The BCA will be holding one property tax assessment appeal hearing, and the Board of Abatement will be hearing one appeal request. And we could use more people. We have exactly the right number of people to attend. So if there are any more counselors who are also BCA members who could attend.
Okay.
That was the intent.
Raise a hand. Who's going to attend this BCA meeting?
Yeah.
I'm not on the BCA. I am.
Yeah.
I forgot officially.
One of the perks of the job.
It's part of being a counselor is you are also a member of the Board of Civil Authority. So looks like we're going to have enough. And if you want to come and see what being a member of the Board of Civil Authority and Board of Abatement is all about, that's great. The materials were sent to everybody in advance. I don't expect it to be a long meeting, so I would think maybe a little over an hour. So tomorrow night here in person. So thank you all. I didn't want to have to, the agenda is, or a quorum is always an interesting thing because for the Board of Civil Authority, a quorum is 3 out of 22. For the Board of Abatement, a quorum is 12. So it becomes difficult to make sure that we get the right number of people that we need. So thank you very much. And that's all I've got.
Are there any questions for Clerk Treasurer Dawes? Well, thank you for the update. And I think it's just really exciting to hear about all the ballots going out by mail and all the efforts that are being made to make voting rights accessible for the people of Berry City.
Yep.
All right, and that takes us to the Liquor Control Board, if there are any items.
Nope.
No, okay. That takes us to the city manager's report, item number 7.
Thank you, Mayor. So let's start off, just actually immediately preceding this meeting, I was able to meet with the chairs and vice chairs of the city's committees and task forces. They were not all present, but they were all invited. And had a productive conversation talking about a reset of our committee process, as we've talked a little bit on council about. We'll share just briefly what I spoke to them about and sort of what my next steps will be in with you. The first thing was to thank them. These are all people who volunteer their time to come and help the city and contribute to the city and make it a better place. So I thank them for their efforts. That's really the first thing to do. And then recognize some things that we need to do better from the city's perspective, which I've talked to Clerk Dawes about this. We need to do better training and maybe more regular training for the committee chairs who are running hybrid meetings, which I've struggled with myself in this room, and helping them with maybe templates for minutes and agendas to make their jobs easier. When you sign up to do city work, I don't think you sign up for the paperwork part of it. So to the extent we can make things a little bit easier, that's something that we can figure out how to help. Talking about better communication, coming down from my office to them, making sure that they're aware of the things that are happening at the city level so they can better understand how they can serve the city. And it really talked about making sure there's direction and guidance for all the committees. Some committees may be outdated. Some of them may be going forward without clear purpose. And so I think that's really a role that we can talk about here at the council level of what are the charges to these committees that maybe don't have a clear charge. How can they better support the city's work? And so I think that's something that they were actually extremely responsive to as well, that having a direction from the council would be a good step. Just shared my observations with them about what I've seen of the committee sort of ecosystem, if you will. I think we have too many committees. And, I was very candid with them about that. It doesn't mean that they're not valuable. I think we also have a lot of vacancies on committees. So I think that sort of speaks to a need to reevaluate, assess, and consolidate. I think many committees have too narrow a focus, and they're also narrow, but some also overlap in a strange way. So I think a real good assessment of figuring out what the charges are can maybe help us inform what the actual landscape needs to be moving forward. And I think it'll help us make sure that the council's getting feedback from maybe one body instead of 3, and you can get more clear feedback that way. Talked about council representation at each meeting. I believe there's been a practice of having council liaisons, and I think these are creations of the council. So I think it would be important for the council to participate actively and have a pulse for what's happening on these committees. And talked about the appropriate balance in the roles between city staff and the committees. The city staff really is not in a position to accept work from the committees. We can certainly support that work, but we are, as you know, stretched too far already, and we don't have a deep enough bench to be able to assign people. Many staff members have multiple committee assignments, which is a big burden on top of their day-to-day work. So I think that also speaks to why consolidation is important. And if we can have more consistent staff support, with your committees, it will be better for the process as a whole. So I told the committees was welcome to hearing their feedback. I'm going to come back to you with my recommendations and welcome your feedback as well. But really think we need a reset. Heard some frustration from folks on serving on committees with, I think, the lack of direction, lack of support. And, you know, it shouldn't be frustrating to be volunteer. And so I think if we can reset this and make it productive, it'll be better for the many people who want to serve our city and also for the council. So we'll be back to this conversation. Just want to give you a preview of what my conversations were. So you can think about, you know, when we come back to a full discussion at council, but really had a real positive discussion this evening. Sort of related to that, just a very brief staffing update. I wish it was a longer one, but we do have, I think, some signals of movement, which are good. We have had an IT candidate that was interviewed. We've had another IT candidate come forward this week. So there's real movement there. Really excited that we'll have somebody on board for that position, which is desperately needed. Had been engaging with an assistant director of public works who's a local person and would be a terrific fit. Just hoping, the challenge is salary, and we're hoping that we can offer interesting enough ancillary benefits to entice them to join the public sector. So hoping, fingers crossed there. And I know Director Ahern has been engaging with an engineering technician, which was a big loss to his office. So really hopeful that especially a department that has so much work we'll get some extra help. Really, I think we're close to making an offer there. So very excited that there's some movement there. I know Rick's online. Rick and I have talked a lot about how we amp up our recruitment efforts. We need to, I think, figure out where people are looking for jobs, where we can start looking, where others are finding people, looking at internships, working with the colleges. Just we're really grabbing at everything because it's a real dire need for us. But excited that there seem to be some signs of activity. Just a couple real quick things. I know we want to get moving, but want to thank Carl Rogers in the town. We have yard waste disposal starting October 1st through November 5th. We have a flyer posted now on the city website with all the time, so I won't go through them, but really thanks again to Carl and the town for making this available at no charge to city residents. Spent a lot of time with staff this week on the FY24 budget. So thank you to the council for last week's feedback. Gave us a starting point for our conversations. And really the staff has been working really well together. We're working on a product that will be reflective of the feedback we got from you last week. And then want to say, I've heard from Councilor Deering. I know heard from you today about this. And I think Councilor Booton as well, if I'm not mistaken, but the Garfield Playground structure came down this week, and we didn't do a good job of telling the neighborhood around Garfield Playground that it was coming down. It came down for insurance reasons, so it was an important thing to happen. I think that's a failure on my part to make sure we didn't talk to the neighborhood. Certainly, as father of two kids, my kids would have been very upset if their neighborhood disappeared without notice. So I really feel bad about how that happened. So I've asked the Recreation Committee to meet. Their next meeting's October 3rd. Ask them to meet at Garfield Playground so they can hear from the community about what we do next in that area. It was a structure that had outlived its useful life. And so we really didn't have a choice. It was dangerous, but I think we could have done better and really want to hear from the community about what we do with that space in the future. I know we have our capital improvement plan discussion coming up next week. We released a letter of interest for ARPA last week. So I think there are options for us to figure out what to do. But again, I feel bad that we, sort of sprung that on that neighborhood. And we will do better on that. But we'll have the Recreation Committee there on October 3rd at 5 p.m. To hear from that community, and the meeting will happen at the playground itself. And just on that last note, as I mentioned, ARPA community engagement letters up. Please go to our website. Please start working on your proposals. Our public engagement process will kick off in early October. We will provide plenty of notice about that, but just again, a plug for making sure people are working on ideas so that we can create a very responsive plan for the use of our ARPA funds.
So this is where a community member can submit a letter of interest with an idea that they might
Correct.
have for a public benefit where we can apply ARPA funds.
Correct. And then it'll be discussed as part of an engagement process. Yeah.
Councilor Deering.
Do we have any more intentions or plans of taking down any more structures for the rest of the season?
I don't believe there are any more. We've been making some safety improvements at other playgrounds. And Rick, not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you're passive. You walk these sites with passive. I believe Garfield was the only one with a major structural issue. Everything else, I think, was maintenance that we could manage. No, Rick's gonna. Well, I'll confirm that.
Sure.
With you,
And
but,
just
yeah.
a note, so a constituent that I met with on Friday had suggested that if we had reached out on the city end, that maybe the neighborhood itself could have potentially put some money in to build the playground. She had suggested something like the Mathewson Playground and some things like that. We talked for a couple hours, so that was one of the things that she had talked about. Was just in the event that there was another issue that we could potentially get ahead of it and not say, hey.
Absolutely. I think we'll make sure that it's not a surprise to anyone, and we'll certainly engage with communities to see if there are options like that. My understanding is this particular structure was beyond repair. It over nearly approaching 30 years, I believe it was. So it was really sort of beyond the state of being put in a safe condition according to our insurance. So but yeah, I think that doesn't I think it's a great idea to make sure that before we move forward, we open up and hear more in case there's something that we're not considering. Sure.
Council Lozon.
Thank you. And thank you for that report, Nicholas. You're working hard. It shows.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm not checking up, but I notice when your office light is on into the evening, but I'm not checking or anything like that. And
Yeah, leave it on.
and I just want you to know that, you know, as someone who's lived here most of his life, I know a lot of people, I get a lot of feedback, and it's all been positive.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. I am interested when you met with the committee members, I am interested if you were able to drill down, you know, relay my concern about the lack of minutes on the
Yes.
city webpage. And was there any preliminary, I don't want to, you know, get all into it because I know you'll be talking to us about that later, but was there any feedback at all about why that seems to be happening?
I think part of it was we lost Jody. I think that was a big step in the process that was lost. And I'm very happy to we have a new executive assistant, Roxanne. We are working very hard to onboard. She's working right now on the council packets, which has been the first priority. But I did mention to the folks that were present that we're going to be stepping up our end of the game to help make sure those things get posted. I think it's two-pronged issue. I think the training needs to happen to make sure that the people who are volunteering know what the expectations are. I think on the back end, we need to be very diligent. If they're doing the work, we have to make sure they're on the website. I think we're doing a good job of it now. I know Carol is on the group that receives the emails, and we're pretty on top of it. And sometimes someone will email me the minutes, and I'll make sure that it gets to the groups. So we're getting there. I think once we have my assistant more onboarded, that we're going to be able to provide more substantive help to the committees to make sure that we're on top of it. Perfect. Things like, and they mentioned that they used to get like a reminder from Jody when they were missing, and I think we'll get to that point where we can make sure we're in compliance.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for the city manager? I just really want to thank you for the updates on all the efforts that are going into staff up, and given how challenging the labor market is right now, and especially the legwork you've done to assess where the committees are and how we can get to a better place, and including some onboarding so that people understand their obligations under open meeting law. And how to get the minutes and all the things that you have to know that make being a volunteer somewhat complicated in Vermont's system of governance. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And you said the CIP is coming next week. I'm really excited.
Yes, me too.
For that. So
Me too.
Way to go. Yeah. All right. If there are no other questions for the city manager, that takes us to our new business, given that we have no unfinished business, and item is the appearance by the Diversity and Equity Committee. And I wanted to just start by just providing a little table setting for this conversation. The council unanimously created this committee on June 16th, 2020. The council created the Diversity and Equity Committee to combat bias, injustice, racism, oppression, and work for structural change, especially for folks who historically haven't gotten a fair shake, who've been discriminated against, who've been marginalized. I've been so impressed by the steady work that this committee has been doing. They've developed mission and goals and objectives. They've worked through definitions. They've evaluated policies. They developed an assessment tool and done tremendous outreach across many boards, commissions, and committees, including some of the task force that came out of the All In for Barry VCRD visit. They help support resolutions, and they're exploring new opportunities for funding. So I want to thank all the members of the Diversity and Equity Committee who've been working in such good faith over the past several months and years, really. And I know we're here to talk about conflict, and there's the conflict that occurred at the Diversity and Equity Committee. And I know my dad always taught me that when it's okay to trip and fall. It's okay to make mistakes. It's all about how you pull yourself back up. And, every person I think on this council has made mistakes, and every board and committee stumbles and falls from time to time. And I want to start by talking about one thing that this council, I think, stumbled and fell on by going into an executive session on August 30th improperly under legal exemption with no pending litigation and with no attorney present. And I think it's only right that we acknowledge that and come clean, because we have to be the example. We have to set the example for boards, committees, and commissions. And there are right ways to handle these conflicts, and there are wrong ways. And I think the right way is to allow people to save face, redirect in the most productive, forward-looking way. And so that's how I hope this council can start this conversation. And with that, I think it'd be nice to hear from the committee chair, Joellen Mulvaney.
Good evening. Thank you. And thank you for inviting us to this forum. I share the council's goal of transforming our city into a welcoming, inclusive, and fair place where everyone feels like they belong. Transformative because we know there are inequities and unfair treatment in the civic, social, and economic life of the city's residents and those who work or travel through it. The Diversity and Equity Committee's plan was to present the recently completed report to the council, and I wish that's what we were doing tonight. I apologize to the Barry City Diversity and Equity Committee for not being able to address the ideological differences that prevent us from doing harm to each other. As a result, members have been suffering in silence for all this time, and some sadly have left the committee, while others have sought the solace of public sentiment. I apologize to the City Council for not understanding how much and what kind of support is needed to do the work of identifying and making recommendations about barriers to equity within the city's social and civic life. 2 words, diversity and equity. Diversity defined as people, not as ideas. Here are the definitions that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns put together, with adjustments to match the one that we have listed on the city's webpage. Diversity. Socially, it refers to the wide range of identities. It broadly includes race, ethnicity, gender, age, national origin, religion, disability, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, education, marital status, language, veteran status, physical appearance, etc. Equity. The fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all people, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that prevent the full participation of some groups. The principle of equity acknowledges that there are historically underserved and underrepresented populations and that fairness regarding these unbalanced conditions is necessary to provide equal opportunities to all groups. There is no reconciliation between upholding women's rights to privacy and penumbral rights to health care and removing those rights. What kind of working relationship can we expect from a group inhibited by their composition? The council chose the makeup of this committee and built in conflicts and hypocrisy. This has resulted in a pattern of transgressions and intimidations that undermine our mission and development. When I say transgressions, what I mean is the violations of our agreements with each other to do no harm. We need your support and assistance in developing a better method of placing people on the D&E committee, and we need professional help. Here's a chance to model a mediation process for difficult conversations and working on solutions. A process where people calmly and respectfully engage in discourse, not vitriolic, ill-informed accusations and conclusions. Those two things will help us move on, knowing we will have meaningful help. Thank you for this opportunity to say these things.
Thank you for your comments, Chair Mulvaney.
I wanted to add, please, I believe that one of our other committee members wants to speak. That would be Ellen, if you're still wanting to do that. Ellen Kay.
Sure, Ellen Kay.
Do I need to move this closer for the people online to hear? Yeah. Can people online hear me? Thumbs up. Yeah, I see a nod. Okay, great. Well, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Ellen Kay. I live in Berry City, and I have served on the Diversity and Equity Committee since its beginning. I also serve on the Equity Committee of the University of Vermont Libraries, known there as the Inclusive Excellence Committee, and the Equity Committee of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns as the representative from Berry City. Berry City is a member of VLCT, which has committed to building equity and fairness into city and town governments in Vermont. And it created the Equity Committee to advise VLCT on what that looks like, what the tools are, what kind of assistance the municipalities will need in order to address and dismantle systems and policies that create barriers around gender, race, ability, ethnic background, language, age, and other inherent factors, so that those factors might no longer determine outcomes of people's lives and make our cities and towns into places where all will be made to feel welcome. VLCT expects its member municipalities to take on this work in earnest. It's serious about bringing justice, fairness, and equity to the way we do things in our city government. Berry's Diversity and Equity Committee is one of many such efforts across the state trying to do this work. The VLCT has come up with helpful criteria for how its equity committee functions, who serves on it, and what that service looks like, which our city would do well to consider as a way to support its committee and the important work ahead. So from its list of core values for the committee, I'm going to pull out a couple. Diversity, equity, and inclusion should be embedded in all aspects of local government. We acknowledge, secondly, that institutional and systemic racism exist, and we must be intentional in dismantling them. From the membership guidelines, Equity Committee members, and this is VLCT, which should be a model for many municipalities, Equity Committee members must be committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and will actively participate in the mission and objectives of the committee. And from the required committee member responsibilities, members must devote the time and engagement necessary to accomplish committee goals. They must commit to ongoing professional development activities. to build awareness and knowledge of diversity, equity, and inclusion principles. And they must appropriately represent the Equity Committee and the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion internally and externally. I'm deeply committed to this work, which itself is hard. The harms of systemic racism and other systemic exclusion that exist in this country have been embedded for so many generations. We didn't invent it. We are not guilty of it, but we must work to change it. I have no illusion that we can make the shift quickly or easily, but making sure that each of the members of this committee is upholding the purpose, goals, and charge of the committee will allow us all to pull in the same direction, leaving us plenty of room to disagree about how we might get there. I call on the City Council to support and enable the work of this committee and the very important work that we have to all do together. Thank you.
Your comments on, okay. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak to this matter? Anthony, it's Anthony Williams, right?
Are there any more committee
Got it,
members?
okay.
Mr. Mayor, are there any more committee members that wanted to speak? There are a couple
Oh, yeah.
more present. We have Greg Cattell. and-
How about we can do this and then we can jump back to.
Oh, sorry, I thought,
So
fair enough. Sorry, sir.
it's a good point. I appreciate it, Dave.
Absolutely.
Just so you know, I have contacted all the committee members except for one, and Ellen and I were the only two who wanted to speak.
There may be one more.
Okay.
No.
So good evening. I'm Anthony Williams. I live up on Grandview Ave, beautiful part of our wonderful city. So as a citizen of Barry since 2002, I've even ran for council, as I previously stated. Acknowledge that being a public servant isn't for everyone. It requires a level of commitment, dedication, and tolerance that not everybody can hit. To be okay disagreeing, to expect it, to still be cordial and civil to our fellow citizens. Super important. And as I said, until recently, I assumed this was kind of a universal mindset that I could be confident no matter what the city process that was going on, that those are the types of people that would be tapped for those positions. Sad to say, based on what we've seen recently with the Diversity and Equity Committee, one thing's clear. Some folks seem to have slipped through those civil discourse cracks I assumed were a filter. I want to make myself super clear. I'm not here to debate any specific issue nor defend any or attack any particular position. I'm here to employ my city government to step up and apply order, to remind you of your oath and your duty in your seats, to insist we apply civility in our city discussions. To those who would divide, silence, and advocate violence against one another, I do believe you have a responsibility to isolate and protect our citizens and processes from such individuals, especially at a committee level. What we witnessed in that video from the meeting in August where Mr. Toborg was attempting to share his story on being assaulted for exercising his civil rights was shocking. Yet it wasn't even the most shocking thing that we heard in that session. I hadn't heard Mr. Toborg's story, but clearly three members had. Ms. Kay, Ms. Wheeler, Ms. Mulvaney all confirmed their level of tolerance to diverse thought with their responses. It was crystal clear. The anger, hatred, and opposition being displayed towards Mr. Toborg based on his stance had hit such a level, all three of these individuals had lost all capability to be civil. They'd completely lost all ability to apply equity to a discussion and certainly weren't planning to allow any diversity of thought. They were completely unhinged and really weren't trying to hide it any longer. They didn't like Mr. Toborg and boldly suggested they wanted him silenced, if not outright removed from the committee altogether. Mr. Cattell, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, seemed to be the only voice of reason and civility outside of Mr. Toborg who was actively being attacked. As I considered what it would take for me to treat somebody else with such venom, I just didn't understand their stance. Bear with me for a minute. Take the ballot item out of your mind completely. It seems Ms. Kay, Ms. Wheeler, and Ms. Mulvaney were suggesting anyone who disagreed with their stance is justified to receive an angry, violent response. I watched the video a few times. That message came across crystal clear. Are we okay with a committee in our city with multiple members, including a chair, who suggest violence is justified, provided whoever that violence is being committed against is someone they disagree with morally and politically. I can't square what else they had in their head as I attempt to piece together their motivation for such a response to Mr. Toborg sharing a story of being assaulted by a vehicle. Despite this, I watched Mr. Toborg stay calm, friendly, and professional in his demeanor. What I'd like to do now is I would like to ask each council member a question, if that's all right.
Yeah, this isn't an interrogation.
It's okay.
period,
I'm not
so-
interrogating. I just
Yeah.
I want it for the record.
And I'm saying I'm not going to allow
All
an
right.
interrogation, but
So,
you have spoken for
question.
5 minutes.
Open
Yeah.
question. Are you
Yeah.
okay with somebody
Do
justifying?
you acknowledge my authority as chair to run?
Absolutely, sir. Yes,
We have a lot of people that want to speak. This
Yep.
isn't going to be a debate. This isn't going to be an interrogation.
I agree with you. I'm
You've
not trying to have a
spoken for
debate,
5
sir.
minutes.
Yep.
Thank you.
So
Mr.
simple
Williams.
question.
Yeah.
Don't feel free not to answer. Are you okay with somebody justifying violence based off a political and or moral disagreement? If the answer is yes, I have a concern.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Williams.
Can I
see-
end with one more thing? And I
well,
want to
no,
end on a
you've
positive.
spoken for 5 minutes. We're
I'd
going to
like
have
to
to get to a lot of people.
Okay.
So I would ask that you cede the chair, and so we can hear
All right,
from
sir.
other members
Thank you.
of the committee. So I see a couple other members of the committee here, and I know Councilor Deering acknowledged that he wanted to hear. So I see Gregory Kittel and Mr. Toberg. Would either of you like to speak?
I'll speak as a member of the public, but I'll speak.
Okay, well, but not at this time. Okay. Mr. Is it,
Sorry, just
Yep.
for order of operations, it was Mr. Finner, followed by, who I believe is Rachel Nelson under Nelson family, followed by Mr. Grant.
and I see Mr. Kelly also would like to address. So let's start with, you said Dr. Finner is first? Yes, Dr. Finner. And I'm gonna start time. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm timing people because we're gonna have to get through a lot of people. We're gonna need to follow the norms of this meeting to make sure everybody has a chance to be heard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My name is Stephen Finner. I am a resident of Barry City, living on Highland Avenue. Council members have received a document which I wrote a few days ago, which talked generally about the structure of committees and task forces and make some suggestions as to what council's powers are and the responsibility of council to appoint people who are supportive of the charge to the committee. Having said that, I want to review the mayor's comments about the intent to examine committees and task forces, and I think that that's an excellent idea. I generally support the remarks that have been made by the chair of the committee and the member of the committee. But I do think that some thinking and consideration is in order by everybody so that our committees and task forces are able to do what they are intended to do. To that end, I caution that there have been comments made about the applicability of the First Amendment. That is a very complex subject. I am somewhat of an expert in it. I won't take up time here, but I would hope that the examination that the council and mayor are going to engage in will also include consideration of First Amendment elements. And again, the City of Leagues and Towns, the League of Cities and Towns might be of some assistance in that. I am willing to lend a technical assistance if that is desired. Thank you for permitting me to make my comments, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Finner. And I think what I'll do is rotate from someone in the room back to someone online, if that's okay. So I think next up is Tom Kelly.
Thank you. My name is Tom Kelly. I live on Warren Street in Barry. And I came here tonight because having read the Vermont Daily Chronicle and an article, and I sent an email to all the members of the committee, although I think a couple were kicked back. I'm not sure all of you got a copy of the email I sent. about my concerns. So skipping over the part referring to the article, and I watched the video. You all should watch the video. That part of it that's pertinent. I hope you all have. Now, Mr. Finnert said something I wasn't aware of. Maybe he's saying there's a carve out from the First Amendment that it doesn't apply to the committee meetings. I don't know if that's what he was alluding to. He didn't really get specific. But that was my concern, watching that committee meeting, not enlightened by Mr. Finnert and maybe some exceptions or some rules where it doesn't apply under those circumstances. But assuming the First Amendment applied to that meeting, it was a jaw-dropping experience to watch it. And what came to mind just sitting here was I went to Constitution Day celebration. There were maybe 20 people there. That includes the speakers on Saturday a week ago, not even a week ago, September 17th. And alluded to at that meeting was what Ben Franklin said when he exited the Constitution Hall on September 17th, 240 some odd years ago. A woman came up to him and said, what do we have, a monarchy or a republic? And he said, we have a republic, madam, if you can keep it. And I think we've got to be keeping in mind things like the First Amendment, or we're going to lose our country. And that's why I'm here. The other thing that is concerning to me is that when a member, or actually the chair of the committee, talks about we acknowledge that systemic and institutional racism exists. I mean, I'm sensitive to that topic. I'm sensitive to the narrative that develops, but I can't be quiet about the we. That doesn't speak for me. And I don't think we need to assume that there is systemic racism or institutional racism. I mean, I always ask, show me an example of that here in the city, in this state, or even in this nation. I don't even know what it means, systemic racism. So I think it would be healthy to have on a diversity committee somebody that maybe isn't buying into every narrative that, you know, and to create a committee that assumes that there is such a thing. I think there should be an apology to Mr. Toberg for the way he was treated at that meeting. And I think it should be a public apology. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for your comments. Next up online, Councilor, what was that?
Next was the Nelson family, I believe it was Rachel Nelson.
Rachel Nelson? Oh, you're just unmuting. There you are. I think you're unmuted now. Oh, we can't hear you though. Let's come back to you, Rachel. It looks like there might be some technical issues. If you can check your settings. Next up on the
So do you want to go to the next Zoom or next?
Yeah,
in
next
person?
Zoom.
Next Zoom would be Garrett Grant.
Garrett Grant.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, hi, my name is Garrett Grant and I live here in Berry City. What I believe we are reacting to here is one-sided reporting of the Diversity and Equity Committee meeting that everyone is referring to. Recent articles suggest one person's point of view is being excluded when it appears to be the other way around. One view is amplified on the front page of the Times-Argus while other voices are ignored. Maybe these articles generate lots of clicks and a bump in ad revenue. But the community effect is pushing everyone's buttons around a contentious issue instead of empowering the citizens of Berry to make informed choices. I respect that people have their own personal beliefs based on their own experiences. What I can't get behind is wanting a participation trophy for having an opinion that advocates taking away rights from 51% of the population. I hear what you are against and what you want to take away, but it's unclear what your solutions are to help women and children. If you want to prevent abortions, let's work together to expand access to contraception and have conversations with our children about consent. And let's not make raising a family feel like a pipe dream. Expanding childcare and supporting a quality school district are good places to start. I say this to show there are ways to honor your personal beliefs and respect family without taking away rights. Anyone can have an opinion. That should not be the only standard for joining a committee. It's important to be informed and focused on solutions. That is how we move Barry forward, but not by undermining a committee that you want to destroy from within. If we continue relying on controversy to win elections and sell papers, we will stay stuck in the gutter. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett Grant. Someone.
I don't know.
Please come forward and introduce yourself. We'll get to know you.
All right, Carol Hebert from Berrytown. I followed the newspaper article and I was shocked to see how a committee could act like that, especially in public with their own committee members. It was terrible. And I've known William a couple of years and he's a really great guy. He's not gonna threaten anybody. And the fact that they ganged up on him to get the information out with the story, at the primary, it was obvious. William was the victim and they were the aggressors at that meeting. And it just didn't set well with me. That's why I wanted to come and say something. Joellen's apology seemed sincere, but I think she owes, and the rest of the people that were involved in that, they owe a apology to William personally. I feel he was the victim. And then Ellen was talking about how diversity committees, how she's been on them and how they're supposed to be run. And that's not the case from the other night. So saying it and actually doing it, I think are two different things. And that's a big disconnect. I'm not saying it can't work, but there has to be changes made. I'm just going to close and say anyone representing the city as a committee chair who would want to violate the First Amendment rights of a citizen is not fit to serve this city in any capacity. And I would like you guys to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Rachel, we'll go back to you now and see if we can get you through the audio.
How's my audio?
Hey, we got you. Yeah.
Hey, so I'm Rachel Nelson, and I guess we're giving the area we live in. And I have to tell you that I'm somebody who has had life experiences that make that really uncomfortable, but I'm on Maplewood Avenue. And I won't pretend to be judge and jury of some incident that occurred that I was not present for, nor for all the inner workings of the committee and the difficulties they've had. What I will come here to say is that I would be happy if every council member could look around both at the audience that is online and the audience that is in the room and identify exactly how many people might fit into my demographic, my age range, and my gender or my childbearing abilities. I don't think you're going to find many. So speaking as a member of that particular group, I'd really like to not see anybody on a committee who's trying to advocate for me not to have the ability to leave my home based on reproductive issues. As somebody who has needed reproductive health care, that to me feels like an act of violence to advocate against my rights and my ability to choose when I have a child, to choose when I'm stuck in the kitchen taking care of my babies, which is quite often. I imagine we don't have so many of my age group, my demographic present because we're busy tucking in babies and making dinners. It's kind of important that on an equity and diversity, we look to include someone just like me. Anybody who's advocating against us having every possibility to make it to such a committee by our own choosing does not belong and does not understand the difficulties. Go ahead and not understand it. Go ahead and have difficulties trying to grasp it. It's pretty specific. But if you can't look at that and listen, if you can't look at racial issues and listen, if you can't look at age issues and listen, if you can't look at sexuality and poverty and all of these other issues and listen and look to find how to include people instead of alienating them, you are perpetrating an act of violence, so to speak, against us. People are going to be emotional. People are going to be frustrated. I'm not going to say that any one of these committee members stepped overboard in any direction or another, but I am going to say that you can't sit in a committee for that and be handed a microphone and have that ignored. You don't deserve a microphone to speak about inclusion if you are not looking to be inclusive. It's going to hurt the people who know people who lived because of these things. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Rachel Nelson.
Sarah.
Sarah Hellman, how are you?
My name is Sarah Hellman. I'm a resident of Berry City. I want to start by saying, as we heard earlier from Mrs. Toborg, the amendment that is being discussed here doesn't actually take away the rights of women to have an abortion. That right will be a Vermont law for probably forever. So, but what I also want to say is to take the issue out of the issue, because what's happening here is somebody's First Amendment rights were threatened, and that is the issue that needs to be addressed. Whatever people's opinions are, that's their opinion, and that's fine. But for a chair of a committee to say, as I read it in the newspaper, that they're going to mute somebody because of their opinions is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments.
Next was Erica.
Erica Rail.
Hi, I'm Erica Rail, Ward 3, Bassett Street, resident of Berry City for the past 20 years. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to speak on First Amendment rights. But one thing I'm going to say that what I read in the paper, I believe to be one-sided. I did not see any quotes from Ellen K. And I don't believe, I took journalism in high school, and I learned that you talk to both sides. That was just what my journalism teacher taught me. To speak about systematic racism, I can tell you what I've seen in Barrie is racism, and I'm a white woman. I've seen the Confederate flags up and down Barrie. I've seen people say the N-word to my friends of color. There is racism here. And I do believe that's one of the reasons the Diversity and Equity Committee was formed, is because there is discrimination here in Barrie. Another thing that I want to speak about, and I'll be very short, is I believe this council was to hear from the residents of Barrie, and right before the city council meeting happened, and I'm very upset about this, is I was scrolling through Facebook, and one of my city councilors had their mind made up about this already. A meme was posted on their Facebook page saying, sometimes you don't need to hear the excuses for what have been made safe for themselves, because their actions have already spoken the truth. And I believe that was geared toward the Diversity and Equity Committee. So one of my city councilors have already made up the decision about this tonight. So I'm a little at a loss right now, and I'm a little emotional, because when I was city councilor, I tried to hear from everybody. And I believe this was to hear from the citizens of Barrie, all the citizens in Barrie, not just have their mind made up before they went to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica Rail. Anyone here in the room? Yeah. It's Laurel Maurer, right?
Yes, you remembered. Hi. Laurel Mauer, Tremont Street in Berry City. Just want to say three quick things to some of the speakers. Erica, who used to be a city council member, I was at an event with her about 2 or 3 years ago. She wouldn't know. We had a speaker, John Clark, and some other people whose names I can't remember. It was a very informative event over at the Canadian Club, talking about a variety of topics, but it was mostly to educate us on what critical race theory was. And Erica and her friends kept interrupting, yelling, Black Lives Matter. I'm not against Black Lives Matter or for Black Lives Matter or anything like that. I mean, I'm just saying that I find it really interesting that she's talking about how she likes to listen to everybody, but she was one of the people that just kept interrupting the meeting and yelling for just to get attention.
that
I don't know. Yeah. Oh,
This isn't
Oh,
about Erica Real.
sorry. I would ask the people online to watch the video, the ones who complained about one-sided reporting. The video says it all, and the video is what I watched a number of times. And my 2 points that I wanted to make was, number one, it's not up to me or anybody else to decide who's right or who's wrong or who believes in this or that. Abortion isn't the issue. The issue is that a person on a committee was treated unjustly and possibly even illegally. I don't know. Maybe the open meeting laws or something apply. I'm not sure, but I know it was wrong, and I know his First Amendment rights were violated, and it was just plain rude. I agree with Mrs. Mulvaney in her criteria from VLCT about what the committee should aspire to. I think those are all wonderful aspirations. I'm just sorry she couldn't live up to them. And personally, I think that she lacks basic leadership skills. She was not fair-minded. She was not inclusive. She was not supportive. She was not positive. She was punitive and shut Mr. Toberg down. And that is not the way to have discourse, to be creative and come up with inspired ways of fixing problems. In my opinion, she should not be the chair of the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mauer, and thank you, Council Lozon. I'll just as a reminder, I'll read from our rules of procedure. Order and decorum shall be observed by all.
Speak up, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Order and decorum shall be observed by all persons present at the meeting. Neither members of the council nor members of the public shall delay or interrupt the proceedings or the peace of the council or disturb any member while speaking. Neither members of the council, neither members of the council nor members of the public shall refuse to obey orders of the mayor or other presiding members. Any person making personal, impertinent, slanderous, threatening, or profane remarks shall be called to order by the mayor and may be ordered removed from the meeting if necessary. Just as a reminder, let's focus on the issue and not necessarily try to get into a debate with other people. So next up online, Danielle Otarski.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, I'm calling from Stanford, so my connection may be a little bit rough. So my name's Danielle Zarski. I was the secretary for the Diversity and Equity Committee for about 2 years. I think that the meeting that everybody's speaking about happened maybe 2 months after I had left. And I just want folks to know, if you hadn't been watching or listening to those meetings or reading the minutes when they were available, that committee actually was active for a really long time and didn't have any particular incident. I think that what we're looking at is a situation where there was a lot of passions fueled. I hear how people are feeling very passionate about their First Amendment rights. So I think that you should take that passion you feel and then imagine that passion, right? When somebody's threatening to potentially support something that could take that away from you. And I think that that was the feeling that some of the board members had that night, because they were looking at reproductive rights. And while I understand that they're not voting on that. They're seeing a member supporting something like that, which is taking away that right, right? And as you say, the First Amendment right is important to you, so are reproductive rights for women. And so I think there was a lot of passion that fueled that argument. But if you look, you know, for the past 2 years or so at the meeting minutes, you'll see how respectful everybody was to William. Okay, so I think we need to consider that in making this decision. I do believe that the reporting was not very good. It definitely did not do a great job in really investigating conversation or even the history of the group. I think it also indicates that maybe there was an issue there that maybe should have been settled earlier when William went back to get reappointed to that group after that, the few years that he served. So I just want, you know, council to think about that, to recognize that this was one incident. Passions ran high for really important reasons. And we don't want to just judge somebody for this, you know, I don't know, this one incident. I worked with all these people. They were very kind and respectful to each other. And so I hate to see, you know, or hear people just from this one reporter's account that, you know, Joe Ellen's, you know, shouldn't be serving or isn't fit to serve. You know, she put so much energy into this and she cares. And so I think please consider that as somebody who served with these people for 2 years, you know, writing down all the notes for that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just a quick question. Is there a pending item before the council? Everyone keeps referring to a decision, and I'm not aware that anything's been warned, and I'm not aware that we've been asked to make any decision. So
That's true.
does everybody know something? I mean, that's usually the way it is in my life, but
That
does everybody
that
know
is
something I
my-
don't?
That is my understanding. So
Okay, okay. Just wanted to be clear.
is there anyone else here in the room that would like to speak to this matter? Lisa Leota.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Leota. For the record, I'm Jake Hemrick's partner, but I'm also a citizen of Berry City and I have my own mind and my own opinions, and I'm here expressing my opinion this evening.
I can attest to that.
He does hear them at home too. In thinking about this meeting tonight, I went back on the website and I pulled a copy of the Berry City Resolution 2020-05, which I'd like to thank Councillor Wasizek, then Councillor Hemrick, and Councillor Booton for being part of a council that unanimously adopted the resolution condemning systemic racism and police brutality. And in this resolution, it acknowledges that the city recognizes that systemic racism, sexism, ableism, and other forms of injustice and oppression continue. And they acknowledge that the Diversity and Equity Committee was established to combat these social injustices and to review the policies, rules, and documents of the city to work towards making this not be a thing in our community. And I came here tonight because the Diversity and Equity Committee is important and it's doing necessary work. And it's work that must continue. And I came here to speak and voice my support for that committee and to thank them for the work that they've done. So
Thank you for your comments, Lisa Leota. Next up online,
I have no hands raised on.
next up here in the room. All right, well, hearing and Rosemary Averill.
I'll just.
Oh, no, please, the microphone needs to pick you up. Yep.
Can't you hear me? And then we will have one online. Thank you. I spoke a couple of weeks about this, Rosemary Averill, Ward 2. I think we could probably all agree that our shot at diversity and equity in this city is important, no question. That's not the issue. The issue is how Mr. Toberg was handled or treated in that meeting on August 15. Was uncalled for. It just cannot stand. Something has to be done. It can't just be brushed across the rug and let go. This is serious. These are representatives of our city, the council, of you, Mr. Mayor, and you, Mr. Booton, and Mr. Wazazak. This has to be dealt with. And again, we can all applaud our committee, but not for this reason. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Rosemary Averill. Next up online.
Christopher Roberts. And just a thank you to Rosemary for saying my name correctly. I appreciate you.
Chris Roberts.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. I told Joellen Mulvaney I was not going to speak. I am a member of the committee. I am the only member of the committee who was not present at that meeting. So I am not going to comment on it because I wasn't there. But I can comment on the reporting about the meeting because I read that. It was execrable. It was grossly one-sided. It didn't take into account anything regarding the committee or its history. Danielle Orcharski just talked about this, and for someone for whom I have a great deal of respect, we have always in that committee been respectful of each other and each other's opinions. I don't know what happened there. I wasn't there. But I do know that Joellen has done an outstanding job as chair. I think all of us in the committee are working hard to promote diversity, equity, inclusion in the city of Barrie. And I just wanted to get that on the record. We've heard from a lot of people tonight who also weren't at that meeting. They've seen a video. Well, even videos can be misleading. I have not seen the video, so again, I'm not going to comment. But I do want the public, the citizens of Barrie, to know we take our responsibilities on this committee very seriously, including Mr. Toeborg, and we listen to each other. And
take a discussion outside, feel free to do that. So. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, Chris. We just had some.
That's okay. That's all right. I just wanted to make that plain for the record tonight. That's all. I don't have anything else to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the council.
Thank you for your comments, Chris.
Mr.
Toeborg.
William Toeborg from Barrie City, and apparently the part of the reason why everyone's here tonight. I would echo, for the most part, I would echo what Christopher has said and what Danielle has said, that generally we have had very civil discussions in the past. I have on occasion been attacked in the meetings, but generally for my political views, but generally it's been civil. I didn't have a major problem with what happened during the meeting itself, in terms of it was something that I did not find to be unexpected. People, clearly I am a conservative. I am pro-life proudly. I did not display that I was pro-life during that meeting. I did indicate that I was merely going to say that I had been on the talk of the town. I think if you've seen the video, you can see what has happened. I was more concerned with what happened after the meeting, where I got the email from Joellen Mulvaney indicating that she would be muting me. I forwarded that to a member of the Board of Civil Authority whose opinion I respect. I did not tell that individual not to forward it further than that. I didn't tell him to forward it further than that. And so that's where the information went to the press. Most of the time that I have spent in the Diversity and Equity Committee has been in listening. I've spent probably 80 to 90% of the time listening to and have learned quite a bit. I was skeptical about the idea that there was significant racism in Barrie. And I heard, but I did hear from various people about some incidents that had happened. I did express my concern when some of the incidents that people were talking about as being examples of racism were people flying the American flag or flying Trump flags. And I expressed my disappointment that people would be of the opinion that doing so was a form of racism. I am basically, I believe some people have talked about systemic racism. I was skeptical about that as well, but I do believe that there is systemic racism. It may not, my belief that there is systemic racism may be different in terms of what I see as being systemic racism than what other people see. But I think it's something that needs to be, that we need to look into. I have always believed in fighting for the disadvantaged, for the people, the powerless. When I was younger, when I was a kid, that was usually me. But I have always believed in fighting for the powerless against the powerful. That's what brought me to, in part, what brought me to the Diversity and Equity Committee. It's what brings me to my conservative and my pro-life beliefs, is fighting against the powerful and for the people who don't have the power. People who have seen some of the school board meetings will see that I have done that there as well. I think that I was asked by someone, basically, I think that we really need to look at, I was concerned over what I saw as anti-Catholic bigotry during that meeting. I think that what we need to look at is each of us needs to look at what are we actually abiding by the principles of the committee? Are we being respectful of each other? I think I can honestly say that I have not said anything unkind about anyone else during the Diversity and Equity Committee's meetings. But I think that there is something that we need to understand. Right now, I am concerned about the otherization that's going on in Barrie.
I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought. I just wanted to let you know you're almost at 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I see the otherization that is going on. We just saw an individual in North Dakota, for example, who was run over, a teenager who was run over by someone in, I think in the 40s, who saw no problem with doing it because the person was a Trump supporter or a Republican. And I think there was an incident in Michigan where an 84-year-old woman was shot because she was putting out things against a constitutional amendment there. And I think that we have to recognize that there are forces here that want to divide us. There are forces here that are trying to get us to fill us with hatred toward each other. And I think that we need to recognize those forces and fight against them, whether those forces are coming from the right or from the left or even from the president. I think that it's important that we speak out against them and that we work together as one to try to unite. And if the chair can recognize that and is willing to do that, then so be it. But I have not seen evidence that she disagrees with the statement that she originally placed. And thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tilburg. Is there anyone else online? I see one more hand here in the room. Bernadette Rose.
Thank you. I'm Bernadette Rose, and I live in Ward 3. I really appreciate that there's been an opportunity for people to speak and share their opinions tonight. It feels more like being in court. And I don't think our committees are supposed to be in court. As the chair of the ADA committee, I would really not appreciate being judged by the community in this way after having served for a number of years and having done a lot of good work. We fail to see the balance. And I agree with what Mr. Toberg said about the divisiveness. I think he's hit the nail right on the head. But I also know that one of the reasons people are serve on the ADA committee, and I would hope that it would be for any committee we have, is that people have a lived experience or they are able to bring point of view that the committee is representing. And that means that everyone needs to be able to have a say at the table in encouraging diversity, equity, and inclusion. I couldn't hear what Joellen had to say, but I think she made an apology is that correct? Is that what she was saying? I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that. And I just think that for our community to get so absolutely riled up over a single incident where there's a perception that a man on the committee's rights are terribly violated, says that there's something wrong in our communal thinking. We need to think about the rights of all people. And when we talked about the equity committee forming the flag policy because people wanted to fly the Black Lives Matter to say that we supported Black lives in our country, that was so objectionable to some people that there was huge discussions. And so I find this to be really overblown, over-talked, over-criticized, over-judged, and for people to demand that Joellen be removed from the Diversity and Equity Committee is highly inappropriate at this time. And I thank you all, City Council, for all your hard work and for allowing me to participate in our city as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette Rose, for your comments. Are there any other comments online or here in the room? Yes.
So my name's Mary Fifield and I live on Maple Grove Street in Berry City. And I want to thank the Equity Committee for their they're difficult. They're difficult work. They're imperative work. And we do come from a legacy in this country of institutional racism. And it is documented, by the fact that the original people who could vote in the country would be defined as white males of a certain age and also property owning and of a certain income level. And I don't know if the Christian religion was also a part of it. But so that's just one, it's not my opinion. It's written in our documents. And so throughout the evolution of our progression to a more perfect union, we have not achieved equity. And, recent traumatic events that dramatically highlighted the need for addressing equity and justice. And all of those issues, you could have a Venn diagram of marginalized peoples who are marginalized still, who have been historically, who continue to be. And so it is an ongoing discussion within all of the concentric circles in which we exist, with our personal circles, with our community circles, with our state circles, etc. So anyway, I just wanted to say, I guess in 2021, maybe there was finally an anti-lynching law that was passed. And George Floyd was, murdered under the color of law. And this is part of the conversation. So I applaud the committee, and I applaud the community for speaking about a very difficult and painful subject, where people do have different life experiences. But within, our context, there's your personal experience. And then there's also documented history. There are studies done. And so we can't look at everything, but we can acknowledge that there are all of these different intersecting places to get information. So thank you all for all your work. Thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other additional public comments before council takes this on? Yes, Joe Shadroy. Or Shadri. Chadroy. I'm gonna get it.
Don't turn 70 and discover you have arthritis in one knee. You can't get up out of the chair without almost knocking you over. I'm sorry. I know. Hi, my name's Joe Shadroy, was born and raised in Barry and have retired back here. I'm just kind of confused about what exactly is being discussed here or why. I understand that there was a meeting of the committee. I understand that it got hot. I understand that the chairperson threatened Mr. Torberg with being silenced, etc. It appears she has, apologized for that, and I don't think that that's anymore. But why is it before the city council? Are you guys going to vote on removing the chairperson?
No.
I don't understand why this is getting this much talk. And if someone could explain it to me, I know that a lot of people are feeling very emotional about it, and that on both sides. And yes, Mr. Torberg, or whoever was talking about some person got shot for this. That's on both sides. And I was really glad that they said it's coming from the right and the left, this divisiveness. And I would hope that the divisiveness that appears to be coming up in this issue can be resolved. And that's enough talking out of me. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you for
you
your
for what you
comments.
do. Thank you for giving me a time to take this arthritic meeting.
Counselor Wazak, anybody else online?
Seeing them.
All right, any further comment? All right, hearing and seeing none, city council. Sam Stockwell, Counselor Stockwell.
I would just like to say that a few years ago, Michael Sherman, a historian and who's on the diversity committee in Montpelier, wrote an editorial and he was saying, we don't have your history and my history. We have one history. We do. We have one history in which and we have a history of discrimination. We have a history of much worse than discrimination. That can't be denied. It can't be denied by anyone. We have to agree that these are things that happened. And these are things whose impact is still felt today. And as a teacher at a community college, I've never had a student who of a minority of any kind who didn't report exclusion, racism. I was working with a couple who said, they had lots of offers for housing. This was a few years ago when there actually was housing. But when they went, it was he was Black and she was white. The offer went away. That was just very basic. Very simple, very contemporary.
If you need to take your discussion outside, please take it outside. Otherwise, I would ask that you recognize the speaker. I'm sorry to interrupt, Counselor Stockwell.
That's okay. Anyway, so I'm hoping that I think it's critical that we agree on what our history is and what we've done. That's a really important thing. And this is our country. And flying the Confederate flag only has one meaning. It doesn't have a possible other meaning. It has only one meaning. And I won't go into the history lesson, but I could. So, but I'm just wondering, in the interest of getting this committee to move forward, and the work is vital for Berry City. It is vital. If it would be good to have someone facilitate the meetings for a while, for like maybe a period of 3 months, someone comes in, they facilitate, they help establish group norms, resolve conflicts, and then in 3 months they come back to city council and say, here's what's working, here's what's still an issue. So I'm asking committee members, I'm asking the council, does anybody think, wow, what a great idea? Or conversely, what a terrible idea.
I see Chair Mulvaney, you've unmuted.
Yeah. Sam, that's a really good point. And I would propose it perhaps in a different format so that it's not exactly a meeting, so that it becomes some sort of mediation process that can help us get through this and to the other side so we can continue doing our work. I'd be happy to work with a council member or with the city manager on a proposal or on an idea. I'm not sure how you want to handle that. I mean, I have no authority, but I'd be happy to work with folks and get my committee involved in figuring out how to do this. That would be awesome. Like I said, we need professional help. This is something beyond, I think, our pay grade.
I don't know who was first, Councilor Booton. Yeah.
Was it? Okay. I mean, I don't, honestly, the facilitator is going to do what? Because I think we have an ideological difference and that's what's happening. And you're not going to get a facilitator to change that. As we start to go into that realm, we're going to start talking about paying for a facilitator for a committee, and I'm not okay with that. So I'm just pointing that out.
I'll have some comments, but I'll wait till other people have spoken.
Councilor Schoenbell.
I agree with Councilor Booton that this is a huge ideological rift. And it's sad to see it from my point of view. When I saw the newspaper article, I was horrified that it got to the newspaper. And I was also horrified that Barry again is in the front and center of being mocked and in a way degraded. I also believe that the committee is doing essential work and that it is not just Berry City that has a problem. It is nationwide. And there's a lot of provocation. I agree with Counselor Stockwell that when I see a Confederate flag next to an American flag driving down the street on the back of a pickup, I believe that's one, mocking the American flag, and it is promoting racism. You can't erase that history. I also agree we need to move forward. And I would be horrified to think that anybody should be put off of a committee like this, because the committee is in fact doing the work they have to do. They are confronting disagreement. They are confronting what is hard to get through. Concurrently, I agree that we probably need a mediator, because I think things have been damaged. I don't know if it's broken. I don't think it's broken unless we make it broken. But I think it's damaged, and I think we would benefit from an outside person who knows how to mediate between issues.
I'll start with Counselor Wozniak. Counselor Davis first, okay.
So first I'd like to address the Joellen and the pattern of behavior that she had talked about with William. She made it clear in her statement that there was a pattern of behavior with William that was making things not go so well. In my words, not go so well. Those weren't her words, but kind of William was taking away from the process. Then Danielle gives us information as the secretary, so that there were no issues within the committee at all until just recently. To me, as a counselor, I think it's important that we are aware of these situations, if there are situations going on at the committee level. If they're having issues where the committee work is not being accomplished, then it's important for the committee chair to voice that to the city manager, whom then I would assume voice it to us, and then we could kind of address that situation. Would that sound correct? To me, my biggest issue on city council as a city councilor is the First Amendment right that, to me, was violated in the email that was sent. Now, rules of order in which at a roundtable discussion is a discussion not. It is a monologue, and then it turned into a dialogue where someone continued to pester and ask questions. And then when that individual had the floor, they made it clear that it was their turn to speak. And well, then that individual who was, in other people's words, attacking them, they stopped. So I think that it would be important for people to know really what the rules are in which the way we're supposed to conduct meetings. Because to send somebody an email, you're writing it, you're looking at it, you have the potential to edit it and not send it if you feel that, you know what, that's just not in my best interest. Somebody once told me that I'm going to want to write 10 emails, and for every one of those 10 emails, I'm going to send one. I can take my emails and not send them, but my words, I can't take those back. Now, I feel like the actions in the meeting are slightly different and less egregious than that of the email that was sent, purposely trying to stifle William in any public comment other than to resign. That's my issue with the current situation that's at hand.
Counselor Wozniak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start by first just thanking everybody, both online and in person, who comes out. I say this every time we have a packed city council chamber. I do not agree with everything that's been said by anybody tonight, but I really do value when folks come in. When I first came on council, this just did not happen, for better or for worse. We did not see this kind of participation, and I always very much value when we do have voices come in and talk. So thank you all for that. I have no desire, no want to remove Mr. Toberg from the committee, to remove Ms. Mulvaney as the chair of the committee. I think that we heard the chair acknowledge that a mistake was made, and I appreciate what the mayor said. We don't get it right every time. And by nature of the Diversity and Equity Committee, the conversations that are had are very difficult. Emotions are prone to run high because they are talking about very pertinent issues, again, on whether you are to the left or to the right of any given issues. The reason that this committee exists is to confront those difficult issues that the council unanimously in 2020 believed were facing our city. So the most important thing for me is to ensure that the committee is set up for long-term success so that they can get their work done. I would ask, I appreciated, quite frankly, and not many people know Mr. Toberg's niece was one of my very best friends in high school when I was growing up in Massachusetts. And when I first moved up here, he was wondering why his niece was liking all the stuff on Facebook of the crazy liberal guy who decided to run for city council. So him and I have always shared this sort of weird thing where we have this interesting connection, but don't agree on pretty much anything else, except for the fact that Rebecca and I were very good friends. But I want to thank William for the comments that he made tonight and for acknowledging that there have been instances of bias, of racism reported in this community that have been brought to the committee. And I think that it's important that he acknowledged that. And I also think it's important that the chair acknowledged that the language that was used and the way it was gone about was a mistake and it shouldn't have happened. And I believe that the chair, Ms. Mulvaney, I know her very well. She's a Ward 2 constituent of mine, and I think that she's a person of her word. And if she apologizes and if she wants to move forward in good faith, and Mr. Toberg wants to move forward in good faith with this committee, then they should be empowered to do so. And that also, requires that Mr. Toberg buy in to the charge of the committee and to buy into the work that's being done, because it is really important. I was talking to a member of the community in Berry City, and they said that we have the river, not we, but the All In for Berry process on the River Access Task Force. It would be inappropriate for somebody to sit on the River Access Task Force if all they wanted to do was to fill in the river and build a parking lot. That's not the cause of the committee. And I'm not trying to accuse you, Mr. Toberg, of not buying in. I'm just saying the effort has to come from every member of the committee coming together as a body to get this important work done. And if that is a facilitator for a couple grand, let's do it. It is worth a couple grand to get the hard work that is done. If we don't need a facilitator and we just need a council liaison, let's do that. If we need to, rent out Alumni Hall so that the committee can have a kumbaya session and have a little retreat, move past this, then let's do that too. The most important thing for me is that this committee is enabled to do the work it's charged to do, and that every member of the committee that's been duly elected by the city council has every right to speak their mind during those meetings. But when a decision is made in the committee and they decide to move forward with one project or another, that requires the buy-in of the whole committee, because these are volunteers. These are not full-time workers. These are folks who are giving up valuable hours of their day. And we all know how busy everybody is nowadays to do this hard work. And that's the most important thing for me that we come out of today. So long story short, I don't want to remove everybody, and I want to empower the entire committee to do the work that has to be done and that they've been charged to do. And I'm willing to explore any avenue to get that done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lozon.
Thank you, Mayor. I suggested this afternoon that we play the video of the meeting at the roundtable, because really what happened here was simple. And Joellen, you are doing some great work on this committee, but that roundtable should have been shut down about 20 seconds into it. It was out of order. It turned into, unfortunately, as Councilor Deering said, a dialogue. Mr. Toberg offered a very simple statement, and then he was asked a question, and unfortunately he answered the question. Then he was asked another question, and unfortunately he answered that question too. And here we are. Person I really wanted to hear from was Greg Quittel. Greg, am I pronouncing your name wrong? And I apologize if I am. How about if I just call you Greg? Because after I watched the minutes or the video, the first time I emailed Greg and just thanked him for his service and his inspiring attitude, because his comment was, we need to learn from each other.
Yep.
And I'm paraphrasing Greg, you know, that there's room for everyone here on this committee, and we need to learn from each other, and we need to do better. And so, Greg, I want to thank you for that, because you've been the most quiet member of the committee, but at that meeting, you were the member that impressed me most. And I just want to make sure you know that. I heard from a lot of constituents, some saying so-and-so, you know, you need to demand an apology. Well, you know, apologies aren't legislated. They come from your heart. So you can't legislate an apology. So I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to support removing Mr. Toberg because I don't believe he did anything wrong. He answered a question. I'm not going to support removing the chair or removing Ellen. You know, that would be wrong, because they all have strong skill sets. And what I've heard everyone say here tonight is that we can all do better. That if we work together, we can all do better. And that's what I'm interested in. But Mr. Mayor, I do need to address something that you said first in the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The executive session was absolutely appropriate. Now, you weren't at the executive session. I was. You spoke to it this evening, so executive privilege has been waived. So I will tell you what I said when we were in executive session. What I said to the manager was that I was in possession of an email in which a chair of a committee had promised, and I can read the quote, but you know, we all know what happened. And I asked the manager in that executive session, I said, I'm in possession of this. Does the city need to get ahead of this or mitigate this before it happens? Because I was concerned that if any committee member, any council member, any citizen is censured or muted by any public body, that we could be exposing ourselves to litigation. And that was the reason that I voted for the executive session. And that was the only question that I had of the manager during the executive session, and it was absolutely appropriate. So with that, let's all just get along, you know? Oh, and the answer to your question, sir, because it's a small town. And thanks again, Greg.
All right. Are there any further
welcome.
comments from council? All right, hearing and seeing none. I think that wraps up this item of business, and that takes us to our own roundtable. I'll start with, I believe
But do we have an agreement that we would consider a mediation for this group, or we're not going to consider mediation for this group?
so, I do see three hands. So who's first up? Was it
There you go.
Councilor Wazalak?
I would say, I know the committee has a meeting in what, 2 days, 3 days? I would suggest that the committee meet again, discuss amongst themselves their preferred next steps and come back.
Yeah.
Is that a motion?
I just
I don't
like,
think it's
I'd like
necessary.
the committee, I'd like to give the committee, let's have a little faith. Let's give them the opportunity to work through this. If you have a few meetings and you're not feeling the love, then come back to us.
And just, I had one other note that I meant to say during my first stump speech, so I'll launch a second one. I believe very strongly, I've said this in council before when we're discussing important issues or issues that are pertinent to the community. Conflict is good. On public bodies, on city councils, on city committees, conflict is good. If you have everyone in a room nodding along and agreeing with everything everyone says, you're probably making bad decisions and you're probably missing something. So I think that it is important to have these hard conversations, to have healthy conflict. The problem is when it turns into an unhealthy conflict, that's how we end up here. So I would like to give, as Councilor Lozon said, the committee the opportunity to work through this conflict in a healthy way. And if that cannot be done, come back and chat.
Councilor Booton.
Yeah, I appreciate that conversation or that comment there, Councilor Wazak, as the two of us often conflict. And it's absolutely, yes, but we do come together occasionally when the moon is blue and
And the
and
coffee
green. Yeah. No, difference in opinions are extremely important, especially on committees. I will say one thing that frustrates me about this committee, because I went back and I watched all the videos and really appreciated the multiple times where I was attacked as a counselor. And that's okay. It's all good. But hopefully they do figure that out. You know, and I think it's good to have the ideological rift in there. Because, you know, in a committee that's talking about diversity and equity and inclusion, you know, there's different peoples and you should have that. Yeah, so you know, I will also make a comment about someone had mentioned systemic racism and how it's different to different people. And that's absolutely accurate, because my definition of systemic racism, and I think I've shared it with the mayor before in the past, and that word definitely probably should be defined by the committee if they want, because I look at it completely different.
Well, it sounds like we have a good approach forward to move ahead, have the committee convene. I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation. I also think this is very important work. I think it's a work that the Scott administration has really been leading on. The Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns has developed enormous resources. It's important for excellence in city services. It's important for that all citizens of this community are served in a fair way, and that we address disparities where we can. And so I'm excited to see this move forward and in a productive manner. So with that, if there are no objections to the approach that has been proposed by Councilor Wazazak and Lozon, all right, then we'll close this item of business. Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. That's to say, you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. That's not executive session, but if you'd like to leave, that's fine too. So roundtable, that I'm going to start with, I think it's Ward 2 councilors this time. So Councilor Wazazak.
No one's listening.
No, you'll pass it. Councilor Bruton. Ward 3, Councilor Stockwell.
I'll pass.
Councilor Deering.
What to say? I got lots on my mind. Just make sure you exercise your constitutional rights. Know them. As one of my former professors at CCV taught me, know your constitutional rights, because they're constantly under attack, and I will leave it at that.
Councilor Lozon.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a suggestion that we add, as you'll note in our agenda, we always have a liquor control board. We did form a cannabis control board. I don't know if you want to do a dash, a slash, or a separate item, but that probably, and especially as we approach October 1, we might want to consider making that a, permanent item as well as liquor control.
I agree. I think that.
So we've all heard about the increase in opioid deaths, and I just wanted to mention, I don't know if any of you saw that the health department is making fentanyl testing strips available to the general public. So if you know someone who is struggling, with addiction, who is using, fentanyl will kill you, and it will kill you fast. When fentanyl first became prevalent on the streets, and this was quite a number of years ago when I was mayor, we had a number of press conferences regarding the dangers of fentanyl. So those testing strips are available. So if you know someone who is struggling with addiction, or if you're struggling with addiction, please get some fentanyl testing strips. It just might save your life. And then lastly, just a shout out to Governor Scott and the other governors in New England who are asking for another $500 million in the LIHEAP program. Heating costs, as we all know, are sort of through the roof. And so they're asking Congress to appropriate an additional $500 million to keep those in the northern states warm. And with that, I'm done.
Where are those strips available?
You can go to the health department webpage, and I apologize, there is an 800 number. I don't have it committed to memory. I'm sorry.
Counselor Schoenbell.
I'm going to pass.
And with that, I just want to say thank you to all the river cleanup crew that happened on Saturday. There was a group of Spalding High School students. We had the Berries all in for all in task force for the rivers group. And we cleaned up sections of the jail branch and the Streeter Brook, and there was wonderful coffee and donuts. We got the city manager stopped by, and we pulled a lot of garbage out of the rivers, and thank city staff.
Yes.
For helping be a part of that effort to keep our rivers clean. And with that, I'll pass. So that takes us to the executive session, unless there's any last items you want to have. Okay. So we have an executive session needed under real estate.
negotiation,
So
Negotiations.
I believe I'll recuse myself.
Yes,
and-
Yep.
yes.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Lucky
in
you.
between.
But I'll hang out with you.
Well, Counselor Deering, want to just hold on for the motion to go in?
I'll make a motion for findings.
And I'll second.
There's a motion and for findings for the negotiation or securing a real estate purchase or lease options under one VSA 313. So motion and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. And
Motion to enter executive session.
we have a motion to enter at 9 PM.
Seconded with
Second, counsel,
the
those up.
clerk and manager attending as
Clerk
well.
and manager. Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you for this.
All righty.
Look at me, I was scanning through my list. So
It's even got the, this is what the steps are going into it. I did these several years ago and every counselor got one. It should be in your drawer unless somebody walked away with it, so.
Which
I saw him in his
I
wife.
make the motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
There's a motion to exit executive session at 9:13 by Counselor Wadsworth, second by Counselor Sean Bell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed.
Move to adjourn.
Ayes.
Actually, before we adjourn, would you mind if we just told Zach that Nicholas and I will be in touch with him?
And tell
Tell Sam.
Because
to
he's
come back
on.
in.
Sam to come back in.
Oh, Zach was on this whole time?
Well, I'm assuming he's on
Oh.
because Habitat for Humanity is there.
Yeah.
So Zach we will be in touch.
Thanks, guys. Have a nice night.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at
Second.
9:14. There's a second by Counselor Deering. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Bye.
No opposed. Ayes have it.
Okay.